Good evening. Tonight is the 3rd of December, 2015. This is the Newmarket School Board, a regular business meeting, and it is 7 o'clock, just after, if I didn't say that. Call the meeting to order and ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
December is a busy time of year, and so we appreciate the folks that are with us this evening. First item on the agenda would be public comment. Is there public comment for us this evening?
Hi, Joanne Lazarus, President of Newmarket Teachers Association. I know it's on the agenda for later on tonight, the superintendent search. However, that's not during a public comment time. So we had 3 teachers that sat in on the committee and gave up over a 2-week period, 5 days of meetings, including a Sunday for over 6 hours, which more power to them. The question I have for the school board is have you met to discuss the candidates that have been put forward?
I guess I can tell you that the school board did receive the names of a slate of candidates that have been brought forward from the efforts of the screening committee and the search committee that was started some number of months ago. And I guess I might as well say right now, the plan is right now that the board is meeting to first contemplate and become comfortable with the approach to interviewing so we can conduct effective interviews. We will conduct interviews with that slate of candidates, and at a date very soon out in the next week or two, we will bring to a public meeting the committee that brought us to these candidates to review the process that they've been through, going all the way back to the profile that was put together about what the candidate should look like, you know, the final candidate, the advertisements that were placed, the search process that we went through, the interview process, and that will culminate in the announcement of hopefully finalists. How many, we're not sure, 1, 2, 3 finalists, and then those folks will work their way through a public conversation, which will include hopefully tours of our schools, meeting with staff and parents, and also a public opportunity to meet and greet.
There is concern that because there was pressure on the committee to move quickly and so that the best candidates would still be available for the interviews. So has there been a deadline set as to when this will happen?
We're right now is the nuance of scheduling, but right now we're hoping that we will be able to pull off the interview process, the announcement of finalists, an appropriate vetting with reference checking and such, and a public conversation and visit to our schools and have an offer made by Christmas.
Fabulous.
So
That's
it's all coming together very quickly, but we want to make sure that we provide as much information to the public about the process that got us here.
Absolutely. There is some public concern about letting it lag, so we would lose candidates.
Well,
Thank you.
And by the way, just editorialize here a minute, the screening committee was excellent.
Yes. Well, I had some great teachers on there.
Okay.
And as well as community and yourself. So
Julia participated in it, and it was a just excellent committee.
good. Glad to hear.
thank you. Anything else for public comment this evening? Then I would ask Julia for her report, and then we'll talk about the calendar of events upcoming.
All right, so tomorrow is going to be a half day for the students. There's a professional development day. For sports, all practice for the sports for the winter season have started. That means indoor track, basketball for all grades. Their first girls' varsity game will be on the 8th away at Wilton, and the first boys' varsity basketball game will be on the 11th away at Groveton. Their first track meet is going to be on December 20th. I didn't quite catch where it's going to be, but it's going to be on the 20th. I think that's a Sunday. The junior class is going to be selling wreaths at Timberland tomorrow. So, yeah, and the progress reports come out next Friday.
Excellent. Any other questions for our student rep, who, again, was applauded for taking a very active and very productive role in the search process, so thank you very much for everything that you've done. Looking at the calendar, I guess I want to say this. We have an update on the superintendent search, which we just did a lot of it, but we'll talk again, and I think we'll talk a little bit more in the agenda. And I would invite people that are at home to pay attention when we get to the item of superintendent search. There's more information coming. But right now, what I want to tell you about the calendar is that the board met Tuesday night with NESDEC and considered, or were given the list of these names. And we're trying very hard now to make the schedule work so that we can find the opportunity to interview these candidates and move the process forward. I don't think we can talk about all the dates that might be involved tonight, but what I do expect is that the board is planning to meet this on Sunday in a non-public session, again, working with with NESDEC, considering these applicants. And coming out of that, I expect at the first of the week that we will make public announcement about dates so that folks can see them posted and put them on their calendars and start to be aware of what the process will look like moving forward. Is that fair? So we're sorry that here on the 3rd of December, we don't have a calendar to hand out, but we're getting there, and we'll be there in the next few days, and then communicate it as broadly and loudly as possible. It's important to note that the board meets again on the 17th with our second meeting of the month. That, I think, might be the night that for public consumption, we announce the finalists and have that conversation with the committee. It's important for everybody to know that our budget is being considered now by the Budget Committee, and we're considering the draft warrant tonight. Just a very beginning cursory look at the articles, but that has to come to fruition very quickly. Hopefully, we'll vote that through on the 17th because we'd like to send that to the Budget Committee on the 21st. And we'll come back out of vacation on Monday, the 4th of January. People should know that the public hearing on the school budget is set right now for Monday night, the 11th. And the deliberative session, which is important to all of us, is Saturday, the 30th of January. So keep in mind 11 January and 30 January is important dates to have a role in the public process about our budget and warrant. Anything else for the calendar right now? Okay, then. First up on our program agenda tonight is an 8th grade Philadelphia trip that we want to talk about. Stacy? Stacy Perkins, please introduce yourself so everybody knows and those at home can benefit. Thank you for coming.
Stacy Perkins, 8th grade social studies teacher at Newmarket Junior Senior High School. I'm here tonight to ask the board's approval for our annual 8th grade trip. We had great success last year's trip. It was the first year we had gone to Philadelphia, and we've decided to go to Philadelphia again this year. We plan to leave bright and early on Wednesday, June 1st, same time as last year. We expect to be rolling by 6:30 a.m., and we should return late in the evening on Friday, June 3rd. This year's trip is going to include visits to the National Constitution Center, Independence Hall, the Franklin Institute, Eastern State Penitentiary, and the Reading Terminal Market. While there, students will gather information for use on a cross-curricular identity project, which addresses all of the 8th grade standards in all 4 of the core classes. For those students staying at home, we again will offer a series of web quests that enable them to access the information that their peers will be accessing while they're on the trip, and in this way, we'll be sure that all students are able to complete that same identity project. The cost per student for this trip this year is $469. As in the past, students must be passing all classes and meet all of the behavioral expectations for the year in order to attend. We currently have 17 students in need of scholarships. That totals just over $5,000. We're on our way to raising those funds. Our hope is to raise enough to not only cover the scholarship requests, but also to lower the price for all of our students. At this time, we've raised $1,000 through Loco Water Stops, $750 given to us from an NSEP grant, and about $890 from our annual pie sale. So we really are off to a great start. We again plan to hold our annual Chili Chowder Challenge, another Barnes & Noble fundraiser, and also our penny sale this winter. The 8th grade trip has become really the culminating middle school event for our students, and it's something that we're hoping to continue. Our students have historically proven their preparedness for such a trip. Every year that we are on the trip, we have adults in various locations that comment on the exceptional comportment of our students, and it's really a point of great pride. Up to this point, we have successfully fundraised 100% of our scholarship needs, but we've got these larger class sizes coming around the corner, and we anticipate our scholarship requests to increase as a result. So we're hopeful that in the future, the board will give us consideration for some scholarship funds, perhaps to start for the 2017 class trip.
Thank you. So, questions that we have about the Philadelphia trip for the 8th grade?
Do you have an idea of how much of a request that you would make from us for the 2017 year?
You know, we bantered about with that, and I honestly don't have a dollar figure that I can give you without discussing it with my team.
Okay.
And I do apologize for that.
No, I appreciate everything you said, and I really see the value in trips of this kind. So I would, love to be able to help you guys in any way that we could.
If I do the math and I
Thank you.
take $5,000 divided by 17 students, per student rate is somewhere around $300?
Just about, yeah.
Okay. And this year's 17 requests added up to around about 5,000. The last couple of years, how many such requests have there been?
Last year, we had 13 requests. I didn't go back and look at the request for the year before, but I want to say it clocked in the low teens.
Okay. So there's at least even now an uptick of a handful.
That's correct.
And potentially the uptick of, as much as a dozen moving forward that is a challenge maybe for you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's perfect for our planning. Yep.
Okay. Are there any other questions that I can answer for
I'll
you?
just make a statement about the Chili Chowder Fest. We should all, we get asked to be judges, and you can go. There's just some chilies that you cannot eat.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, it almost killed me last year.
We do tend to have some spicy ones.
There was one, and I won't name that teacher's husband, but it was bad. It was bad, but it's so good, and the kids.
It was
are
bad,
there.
but it was good, huh?
It was good, but it was. The kids
Feel
are
the
there, and
burn.
it's fun. So it's a fun thing to do, and you can see the kids that are going on the trip and understand again why we're doing what we're doing.
I think it would be helpful also if we could make time after people get back to hear how the trip went and maybe
Sure.
focus on some students with that too. I think that's always
Yeah,
beneficial.
because I never heard anything about the Philadelphia trip.
You didn't?
No, I
Oh,
didn't.
my goodness.
I
Well,
might have, and I don't remember.
No, that's quite all right.
Okay.
I will certainly talk with the team about getting a statement put together for the board upon our return.
Yeah, that would be
Perfect.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What the board needs tonight is to authorize
All
the
right.
trip with a motion according to policy. So I seek a motion to approve the Philadelphia trip.
So done.
Second.
A motion from Ms. McKinney, a second from Ms. Shelton. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? We're unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the information and good luck. Have a great trip. Next up on our agenda is to contemplate the school calendar for 2016-17. I want to clarify the agenda and suggest that we don't seek a motion on this tonight, but since we have it, we wanted to take a moment. I've already mentioned it to the superintendent, but I'll echo here. I really feel strongly that I'd like to see us harken back to the calendar that I remember as a kid, which doesn't say we're getting out when we aren't really getting out. It says we're getting out when we anticipate getting out, which is, right now, this proposed calendar would suggest our last school day would be the 15th. I'm sorry, the 16th. But that doesn't take into account the usage or the reality of any snow days. So every snow day that we take off pushes us out to the 19th, the 20th, et cetera. So what I would propose is that the calendar say the anticipated last day is the 23rd. That way, things like planning for graduation and senior events and such are pegged against that reality, not against the 16th. People won't buy plane tickets and make plans to be gone on the 20th or the 21st because we reasonably are going to use some number of those snow days. This way, instead of rooting for a snow day, right, you're rooting not to have a snow day because every day we don't have a school day off, we back up from the 23rd and get out a little earlier. That's semantics, but I think because in the last couple of years, we've had conversation about waiving days at the end of the year, and it was always about how people had anticipated the year to flow. I think that can be helpful. Anything else that board members see on the calendar that they want to bring to the attention of this administration? I expect they'll bring this back to us at our meeting of the 17th for final approval.
I like the idea. And again, it's just for planning purposes,
Yeah.
but graduation, because we did have one year where they almost lost their deposit, or they might have lost their deposit because of a snow day. So this way we can plan senior week, graduation,
Right.
and not have to worry about that stuff.
Anything else about the calendar? Mike, you got anything else you want us to know or consider about that?
Nathan, we'll be, administratively, we'll draft that revision and prepare that for the next meeting, so the board will have a second option. And I can say that since I've been calling school off, my lightest winter in the last 20 years has been 3 days of wherever I've been. So there will be snow days.
Yeah.
It's just a question of how many going on. In fact, we had a hurricane day one year in August, and we missed the first day of school. So we have weather events.
Well, I think it's important, nobody's thinking about snow days right now, but it's important to say again, in defense of and in support of the administration, we're a K-12 school district, right? So not only do you think about the safety of school buses moving through the community, you think about the safety of students moving to and being at school bus stops, and you think a lot about student drivers, who we have some number of being out in those elements, some of them each year for the first time, confronting those realities. So all of that plays in, as well as the safety of staff, many of whom travel some distance to join us each day. So, okay, that's the calendar. Back to the agenda. There are committees that will continue to meet other than our standing board committees. Are there any reports from miscellaneous committees that want to be shared?
Does that include facilities?
No, search and facilities,
Other-
that's
other
other,
ones?
that's, yeah, other ones. I'm
All right.
trying to think.
CIP.
CIP?
I think that's on the agenda for tonight.
Yeah, we need to deal with that under the budget
Yeah.
matter, okay?
Yeah.
Any others? Not hearing any, then let's move forward. The yellow highlighted spots, you know what, let me take this out of order. Let's move first to the gross appropriations, the default budget, CIP, and deal with all of that. What we did at our last meeting, I think it was our last meeting, was approve or accept on our part, our proposed budget for 16-17. Christine, the business administrator, wasn't with us. We moved that forward. What I think she's ready to do tonight is do three other things. Remind us about the gross appropriations included in that, talk to us about the default budget and get our vote on that tonight, and then deal with the CIP so that we can move that forward to that committee. So, Christine, you want to do that? And then we'll come back to the draft warrant.
Sure. So I handed out just page 7 of the budget packet, just so that you would all have it in case you didn't bring it. So, just briefly, I'll explain the process just for the new folks. The operating budget consists of 3 funds. We have the general fund, which is the packet that you all saw. We have the food service fund, and then we have our federal funds, which are our grants. So the gross appropriation is essentially the authority to spend. So it's almost like, look at it as the ceiling, okay? So we cannot spend more than that ceiling, okay? So whatever the gross appropriation, which if you look right here at the bottom, the general fund operating budget, which we proposed and you approved, was $16,062,526. Our food service fund is $335,400, and the federal funds, the grants, is $450,000. So that gives us a total gross appropriation of $16,847,926. Okay, that's the number that you approved last Thursday to be moved on to the budget committee. You'll see later this evening that when you look at the warrant article, you'll see that these numbers will be plugged in there. Keep in mind that the first number, which currently reads right now, the 16.8, actually is the budget committee's number, okay? So whatever the budget committee approves, that will be the first number of the warrant article. And the default budget, which you will approve tonight, will be your number, okay? So we put the default budget number on. What the default budget is that if the proposed budget that the Budget Committee recommends on the warrant article fails, you will then go into a default budget status unless you choose to hold a special meeting. Okay? The default budget is the prior year's approved budget, gross appropriation budget, okay, with some increases and decreases, and it takes into consideration contractual mandated obligations, things of that nature. It removes one-time expenditures, and then you come up with the default, okay? So what I'm showing you here is the default difference is $47,258 more than what the proposed operating budget that we presented. So what I need tonight from the board is to approve the default budget of, and I'll just go through it, the general fund is $16,109,784. There are no changes in the food service, so $335,400, and the same thing with the federal funds. So the gross appropriation number that you'll see in the warrant will read $16,895,184. Are there any questions so far? Okay.
So we voted last time, the proposed budget 16,847,926.
Correct.
That number will be taken up, or is being taken up by the Budget Committee. Ultimately, if they make any changes to that, that's, their changes are what gets moved forward, you just said, to the ballot.
To the ballot.
The default budget we set, and then ultimately the other thing is that the proposed budget, whatever it is the Budget Committee moves forward, we still have to come back and either recommend or not recommend that on the ballot.
Correct. I was going to talk about that when we
I'm
got
sorry,
to the warrant.
sorry,
No,
go
it's okay. Because, yeah, so what happens when we go through the warrant articles, so there's going to be a recommended and a not recommended. So you can recommend and not recommend whatever the Budget Committee puts forward to the numbers. So you'll have a chance to vote on that. You'll also have tax impact on all the warrant articles, which is done later. So you'll see that when you go through later on this evening, that it's not there because it's a lot of language, it's just redundancy, so I typically just put it in after we start doing the drafts. But that's a good point. Any other?
Did the Budget Committee get this yet?
They did,
The whole thing, okay.
yep,
Okay, so,
yep. So, I need a motion.
so you're looking for a motion to accept the default budget as proposed of 16,895,184.
Correct.
Default. Elizabeth McKinney. Any discussion? Questions, thoughts? Okay. I got a motion from Ms. McKinney, a second from Mr. Zink. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? We're unanimous.
Okay, so
Anything else you need from us about the pure budget? Not really. Okay. So let's talk CIP.
no, and I thank you for bearing with me during my absence last week. CIP, so I've handed out the document that looks like this, just so you all have it. So this is kind of the second version that we have, we originally met a couple weeks, well, maybe more than that, a couple weeks ago with the CIP, and we had some feedback, and so we took their feedback and made some changes, and this is the plan. Now, just keep in mind, this is a work in progress. I think we're in a very good place right now with the plan that's in front of you, compared to where we were a couple years ago. So, do you want me to go through the entire, I know you've all seen this, so I don't know how much you really want me to go over. What are your thoughts? I mean, I could go over the summary page, I can go over, we did do a presentation that you can watch online as well. You tell me
From
how.
my perspective, the summary page, if you could just.
Yep.
And it's difficult for people at home to see this. But for example, on the estimated total cost of,
So I'll review it.
purchase of, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just review it. So pretty much like, okay, so in the FY 16-17 year, the first one is building security. So I kind of broke it up, and that's why you have the spacing based on the projects. So the first one was building security. I originally, the proposal was we were looking for $40,000 roughly for cameras. and about $175,000 in some other entryway and hallway modifications.
And you're talking now about the junior, senior?
I'm at the junior, senior high school. Yep, the first page. And so after, some talks with the town and strategic planning, we decided that we would, the 16-17 consist of $40,000 for the security cameras. And then what we did is we took the $175,000 and we pretty much broke that up over 3 years. So that's how you come up with the $98,333. And then you have it in year 17, 18, and 18 and 19. So the next one was the backup boiler, and I show that it was roughly about $275,000.
Go back to just the concept of what you just said about security.
Sure.
The idea would be that we would budget for or prepare to spend $40,000, based on what you just said. $40,000 we would spend in 16, 17. Would we spend 58 in each year moving forward for 3 years? Or would we anticipate raising and saving 58,000 each year such that in 18, 19, we would have enough money to do 175,000 worth of work?
The latter of, thank you
Yeah,
for clarifying. Yep, so we'd be raising the 58
Our
over
savings
3
account.
years.
We don't have a vehicle or a mechanism to do that, but that's what this concept drives toward, is creating a mechanism and a process by which we propose this. When it's approved, we then fund it,
However we choose. to.
however we
You
choose to do
choose.
that. Okay.
But these are, we've got a total of, for the 3 years of 98, 58, and 58, and that's our savings account for building security for the junior, senior.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Keep going.
So the backup boiler is $275,000. I just put, it's already funded, meaning we have earmarked that money that's in the building repair and maintenance trust fund right now. So it's already there. It's not something we additionally have to raise. The asbestos removal, again, it can either be you fund it and then you fund it for 3 years for $60,000 for the 3 years and then do the overall one time, or you can do it in a 3-year phase if you choose. Window replacements, we would propose that you can either, again, do it in phase, so you'd put for over 5 year, so you could do each wing, or again, you put the money away, depending on the priority of the windows throughout as you're raising this money. If you find that there's a critical need because we're having leaks or damage or whatever, you can always pull the money out, but at least you know that the plan is 5 years, you're gonna need to spend up to $250,000 that you're gonna have to raise to do window replacements.
Christine, you may have answered this already, and I apologize, but where do these estimates, like, for instance, the asbestos and the window replacement and the other ones in that first column, come from?
They all come from vendors themselves that we've contacted and reached out.
Okay.
So RFP was for the asbestos, the windows was from Granite State Glass. The building security, I'd have to pull my notes, I want to say it was Central Signal. So these are vendors that we've reached out to give us kind of an idea of what we need to raise.
These are single vendors, these aren't multiple.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, just
Yep.
because you don't really want to start reaching out and ask for doing all this legwork and then we don't follow through.
Right.
So, but we just wanted to have a ballpark to say, are we in the realm of what we think it's going to cost, or?
Okay.
Now, let me ask you a question. On the window replacement, you've got $250,000. And down below, of course, you've got the renovations of each wing. Are those renovation numbers exclusive of the cost of windows, or is it a double count?
I don't know that answer, because what I will tell you is the numbers that are grouped all down below, the classroom renovations, the site work, the renovations, and the health and wellness and all that, that was a number that was given to me by Banwell in their original proposal of what work needed to be done. But there was no backup that I had that told me exactly specifically what that included and what it didn't include.
Okay,
So I don't.
that's fine. Yeah.
Let me just clear, the time frame on that was when the Bell report was being written, and
I get it.
Banwell was hired to do some work for that report.
Just so people.
It's not in the current work that Banwell's doing.
Right. Just so
Yep.
people will understand, this is our first shot at this, of anticipating what we would need to save to renovate what we currently have.
And I
that's the
think,
best
I
we
think
can
you
do.
point out a great question that going forward needs to be responded to. Are we double counting it? It could be.
So for those at home, there's $13 million worth of potential renovation costs.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then there's a code, there's a prioritization code up in the top right-hand corner that's been adopted by the CIP committee. And you've labeled each of these potential projects in the classifications of either urgent, compulsory, necessary, or desirable.
Yep, and then that was all done at the administrators, the building principals, myself and Mike Martin, we all had a meeting, and we all sat down and agreed to how we felt that these should be prioritized.
Before
Yep.
you, I guess before we go through each one of these, if you can take this process and you can leapfrog, which is very difficult in this community to contemplate doing, but let's just say you leapfrog to a point in the near future when we have potentially addressed in the moment the severe, the greatest concerns of our facilities. Meaning let's say we're not involved in a constant conversation about what are we doing with our facilities, but we have done it, right? At that point, this list ought to be very small, but it still might be real because not all elements of our school facilities are going to, for instance, be brand new at any point in the near future. There will be some elements of them, for instance, let's say a piece of the elementary school, if that's still our elementary school, the roof might be a target for us. It might be a capital need. I don't know if the roof at the elementary school would be in a 10-year horizon for need or a 20 or a 30, right? But at some point, that roof comes on the list of, wow, in the next 10 years, we're going to have to start thinking about replacing that roof. If that roof is going to cost us $750,000, it might be on the CIP at $75,000 a year to save up for a $750,000 project, right? This whole thing gets really murky for us because we're trying to include things that we reasonably ought to address in the next year or two with a major project, right? But, so I just want to say that for the public and for us. It's an important exercise we go through, but it'll be far more meaningful in some respects when we're not clouded by, well, isn't that going to get done when we do the project, whatever the project becomes? Isn't that going to get done? Isn't that going to get done? Not all of this stuff, well, maybe a lot off this page. But when you get to the elementary, for instance, not all of that might be dealt with. There might be some things there that are still on a 5 or 6 or 10-year horizon. This CIP is 6 years in cycle. But it's reasonable, I think, that the district would get to a point where we're looking at least a 10-year horizon, and this just captures 6 of it, you know what I mean? So,
It's a hard concept to get, but, I mean, a taxpayer could look at this and say, in order to maintain our junior high school facility, and I think the elementary facility is a better example.
Yep.
Over the next 5 years, it's going to cost X number of dollars, and that's what the impact is going to be on your tax rate, because that's what we keep hearing about. Give me some idea, 5 years from now, what is my tax rate going to look like? Well, this will begin to help you.
because you ought to be able to do two things. You ought to be able to say, we know that salaries are rising at this kind of clip because of union contracts and so on and so forth. Benefits are rising at about like this. All other things being relatively equal, because enrollment's supposed to be relatively flat. We can project that. We can tell you the capital. Now we can combine that into a pro forma that is meaningful, rather than a shot in the dark. Well, things go up 5% every year,
Right.
which has been kind of fluffy. The reality is, this gets us to a point where you can actually say, reasonably, you ought to be able to predict this is where we ought to be.
Right. Just one more comment.
Yeah.
The town started doing this years ago, and within the town charter, it requires the town to give a 5-year forecast on operating expenses, not just CIP, but operating expenses.
Operations as well.
We're not there yet, but you should be able to say, okay, over the past 5 years, health insurance has gone up an average of 9%. So in my forecast, I'm going to assume it goes up 9%.
Yep.
Then it translates into a tax rate.
You can look at,
We're not there yet, but
and with us, with 80% of the budget or more, 85 maybe, being people and benefits, that pretty much predicts it, so.
Yeah. Good, okay.
If on the top line, on the building security, that's one of those, those, the key says it's urgent. Was that the consensus of everybody who put that on there?
Yep.
And why then would we spread that out over 3 years?
The 3-year spread out is the redesign of the hallways and the entrances.
Okay.
Not just the camera. The urgency is really the cameras.
I got you.
Just getting eyes on the building.
Mhm. And that, is that the 40,000 pot?
That's about the 40,000 for the junior, senior high school.
Okay.
And I said I was gonna, last thing I was gonna say, it isn't. It's like your kid's ready to go to college next year, and you didn't save, well, you still gotta spend it. And this says, whoops, we should have saved
Right.
$100,000
It's,
and we
it's,
didn't.
it's a good planning tool.
Yeah.
You know?
And what the town has done for some number of years is used it, at least in part, as a real saving tool.
Yes.
They don't just plan,
They
they
save.
put money into trust funds, and now there is a substantial amount of money saved up to do this and this and this and this. Some of them are nearing completion of savings and ready to operationalize and spend the money. Some of them are still any number of years out. I thought my favorite example last year was, it was last year that they introduced it. We're gonna celebrate, the community's gonna celebrate its
200.
200 and 300 or whatever it is, and that's, was it 20 years out, 25 years out? Let's save $2,500 or $2,000 every year, and we'll have enough money to be able to really fund a good celebration with whatever was included. That's pretty decent planning, so.
Yeah, and I mean, and just to touch upon on the cameras, I mean, if that's something that you felt was, a need, there's different ways that we can fund that. You have trust funds, we have the operating budget, we have,
Yeah.
so.
So I don't know, I mean, here's what I'm thinking, and that's maybe where I was headed. We're late in the process right now, and this is a great leap forward in merging our effort and matching what the town's been doing on the CIP. What I think we could and should do is that elements of this that aren't specifically related to a bigger project going on would be something that, let's just pick a time, in the spring or in the summer when we have a chance to breathe, not in October, November when we're in the throes of budgeting. Let's go back and look at some of these, because I would love to understand how we arrived at and what's involved in the asbestos. Chris talked about that stuff a little bit when he was with us last time, right? Window replacement. Look at that. I mean, we might know more about this. Obviously, the stuff that is all lumped together here based on a major renovation, we've seen a lot of that, and we're aware of some of that, but, we saw a picture of the gym doors. These are things that I think that could be part of a conversation, a presentation that's made, so that we can be mindful of it, visit it, look at it, and know about it over the course of the year, even as we just are coming and going individually. One of the things that I don't want us to be guilty of doing every year is waiting until October, November, December and saying, oh, we got to update CIP and talk to you about it. And when we get started with this, we'll have seen all of the projects eventually over the next year that are on it, and then it'll only be them reminding us about it and bringing us new issues.
And just keep in mind that we're just going over the summary page, but if you flip through, you have a picture of the project and the description, and then you'll
That's
see a
great.
breakdown. So you can see it on a, even more of a magnifying glass of what each project represents. And then I list who we received the quotes from and things of that nature as well.
I've been hearing about that parking lot at the grade school for
Yeah.
years. And now finally it's $250,000 or whatever it is. And it is what it is. Great, I think it's a great job.
Yep. So,
So do you want to walk through some more of this, or do you want to move this to the CIP committee?
I think we should move it.
Okay. That's one. I take that as a motion from Al to move the CIP as
second
presented.
that.
I've got a second. I don't want to trump any questions or conversation folks want to have those, so, okay. I have a motion from Mr. Zink, a second from Ms. McKinney to advance the CIP to the committee as our submission to the master plan effort of the town. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Then we're unanimous. Christine, thank you.
Yeah, nice job.
And thank you to the principals and the superintendent, the staff, everybody that has contributed to that. Handed out to you tonight, not as a part of the packet, is a draft of the 16-17 warrant. there might be dates and times that are mistaken. This was really an attempt to make sure that we got some placeholders and we started to look at what the articles might be that are there, because really we have to move this to the Budget Committee by the end of the month as well. I think the 21st, I've said, is the target, so that they can consider and offer their feedback and then their recommendations. Here's what I guess I'd like to, I'm just going to walk through, I'm not going to read them, I'm just going to walk through and talk conceptually, and then why don't we talk about each one? We have, in our meetings in the last month, arrived at a suggestion that we would like to consider pursuing a warrant article, likely bonded because of the dollar amount, that would secure for us the dollars needed to fund the architectural engineering fees associated with doing the buildable documents, not just this concept, not a floor plan with a colorful rendering, but the actual 1.5 foot thick design specs that go to the builder, the 3 inches of blueprint documents that cover the whole page. I really wanted to bring those at some point for the public. I think we should. I think we should make sure that if we move this article forward, at some point we say to the town and we show a picture, over here you have on this nice easel a couple of cool floor plans and site layouts like we had last time, and here's some concepts. And then over here is what we're talking about buying now, which is you literally put it out to bid and you've given the builders enough so that they could go build a building, or they could go renovate a building, or what have you. And so that people understand the difference between paying 20 grand over here and paying $1 million over here, or whatever it is. So
we wouldn't get the pretty picture yet. You would get this buildable document, and then we would go?
We've already contracted with Banwell to help us do the design and concept stuff to make a pretty picture. This would be, in the absence of being able to say, here's the entire project, vote for the whole thing, this would be, give us the dollars so that we can keep working with the architect and have them take the pretty picture and turn it into buildable design docs that we could then put on the street and bid out to get offers, contracts that we could, if a bond was subsequently approved, we could sign and go to work. So, again, I think we need to show that. But that's, this article, and I don't have to read the language, but this article is intended to raise and appropriate some dollars, and depending on what level of money that is, we probably would be talking about a short-term borrowing, like a 5-year bond or a 10-year bond, and we might be able to contemplate other financing schemes, if we wanted to roll that into a larger bond later, et cetera. But that would be Article 1 according to statute because of the bonding requirement. Any thoughts, questions about that? There's no numbers here for the public's consumption. This is only an article for that purpose. We talked last time about the Facilities Committee having more conversation, Mike reaching out, and so I'm sure under his report we can talk a little bit more about that. Or we can talk about it now. What's your preference?
Why don't we just talk about it now?
Wanna go?
Since we're into it. I mean, Nate, good explanation on that.
Is that okay?
I mean, yeah,
Good.
and I, just for the public's benefit as well, I'm gonna step back just a little bit. There are at least 2 different ways where you can do a major construction project, a school construction project, whether that's an ad reno or new or whatever it is, a big project. You can move forward like we've done here in the town in the past with a warrant article vote on really what are conceptual drawings and cost estimates. These are just sort of bird's eye, high level. They do have square footages in them, but they're not buildable drawings. And you move forward with a warrant article for the whole cost of the project. That's one way to do it. Where you don't do that is when you don't know precisely what you're going to build yet. Architects also have recommended, and successfully so, that you move forward on a different way, that you approve design fees, the actual design fees for the buildable documents that Nate just described. In our situation here, and I guess I'll speak for myself, but I mean, we're not going to be ready for a full project vote, right, come this March. I think we've got consensus on that. We're doing good things. We're doing our due diligence. I'll talk about some of that. We had another meeting last night on that, but we're simply not going to be ready to go forward with a full project vote in March. But neither do we want to delay a whole year without moving forward on the project. And the way we can do that is to approve the design fees, which is sort of the second phase. And it's obviously contingent upon the school board and the facilities committee and the public being on board with whatever project, we ultimately agree with, whether that's a new project or an ad reno or whatever it is. We need to get to that phase through public input. But the advantages in our situation now of moving forward on this are several-fold. And if I miss any, please step in. But one of them is a potential discount. Normally, an architect won't get their design fee until a project is fully, approved, the whole amount. In this case, the design firm would get the bulk of their fee up front because they're doing the design drawings. That is a trade-off, which would, in my mind, entitle us to a bit of a discount, a substantial discount on the architect fees. Because otherwise, the architect firm is risking that a project may never be approved, and they never get to that second design phase. That's one advantage. It's an advantage for negotiating the fee for us. The second advantage I've already described. Let me talk about timing. Normally, what would happen if you voted on a project without having done the construction drawings, the design phase, what we're talking about now, you'd vote the project in, the full amount, and then the architect would do the design drawings. It would take them all summer. And you would put it out to bid in that winter after they're done, and then they could break ground the next spring. Under our time frame,
So even if you voted it in March,
right,
you don't actually get to the market, get the bids on the final numbers, and then go to breaking ground until a year later.
precisely.
Okay, and so in the
Yep.
scenario that we're going to play out, keep going.
Yeah, so in the scenario that we would play out, if this warrant article, which is a work in progress and
Yep.
wording and numbers, if it's approved, the facilities committee and the board could continue our work substantially. I got to keep emphasizing this. The board and the facilities committee is not going to go charging ahead with a design. The key about this is getting the public input and making sure the public's comfortable with what we're going forward. There is some faith involved here, frankly, and just as when you elect officials, there's some faith involved there. But I think we've demonstrated so far as a facilities committee, and we continue to do so, and the board has, that we're doing the right things to get to the right answers, okay? We're not there yet, and that's why this is being proposed. But what it would help us do is save time, and time is definitely money. I talked about it last night in the facilities committee meeting, and ironically enough, there was a story on NPR this morning about interest rates going up. The longer you wait, we can pretty much be assured that interest rates are going to go up, and every increment is substantial on a large project. So by doing this, you be able to continue with your design process and do one of two things: either put it out to bid, towards the winter, or get a cost estimator to come in. Either way, with finished design drawings, you're going to have a better idea of what your actual costs are going to be versus just the conceptual, pretty bird's eye view drawings that show you the outline of the building and maybe the square footage and the number of rooms and all that stuff. The design drawings tell you where the outlets go, which way the doors swing, every detail. And that's really the bulk of the architect's work. That's 95% of their work for their fee is the design drawings. So we'd be ready to do that. You'd have a clearer project to describe, to show to the public, to show and have a better, firmer idea of the cost come for a bond vote in March of 2017. And if it's approved in March of 2017, your design drawings are already done. You can begin construction that season versus waiting another whole year. Really, you'd have to do if we waited and just had a project vote in 2017 without design drawings being done, you'd have to spend that whole summer doing the design drawings.
And wait another year.
Wait another
to break
year.
ground.
To break ground. So that's the concept in a nutshell. I know the support amongst the board, it makes sense. We talked about it as a facilities committee last night. I raised the idea because there's a lot of smart people on there, and there's no monopoly on good ideas, and, if you got the brain power, let's try to use it. I got a general sense that they see the merit of it too. And not only the financial merit but the saving of the time. We got to remember why we're doing this. It's because the facilities are not adequate. It's for the kids. Okay, so every day lost in doing that is sort of a day missed. So so there's that's really what we're doing it for, in addition to the financial reasons. And there's also just there's a practical reality, of we could continue on and do what we're doing, sort of this pre-design phase, but there's going to come a point early spring or early next year where that's kind of played itself out.
Right.
The school board has looked at everything, and we've sort of say, this is what we would recommend, this is the way we're going to go. But if that's as far as we can take it, it sort of stalls out. You sort of lose people's attention. We sort of lose attention. The architect goes off and, okay, we'll see you next fall, and get going. That's not ideal. So that was a long-winded explanation, but
There's one more thing I would throw out, the politics side, right? For those that have concerns, if this ends up being a bonded amount, a bonded article, and given the numbers we might be talking about, I think it probably would be, even though it isn't a full project, it does require a supermajority. It requires the 60%. So it has a decent threshold. It has to be a community conversation. Some might suggest that this is a bit of a litmus test, because we need to find 60%. So we need to secure a message. We need to hear a message from the community that they're paying attention. There's a confidence that's been built. They appreciate the process we've continued through now for over a year. And the positive, or the reward for that effort and that confidence and that process and that trust is, you would hope, having agreed to this, if they do in this coming March of 16, that the community would appreciate that we are going to do a project. And we wouldn't leave this invested money to waste by not doing something in the subsequent period. But that next subsequent period is going to be a larger dollar and require another 60% vote. So we're essentially putting the project to multiple supermajority votes, giving the public every opportunity to continue to be engaged and involved and speak out and be heard, which is what we've been doing through this process very publicly, very transparently. So I think we all arrived at this, not we all, but I guess maybe in general, we have arrived at this grudgingly because there was some move to try to use this year to get us to another vote. And this isn't a full project vote, but it's a great next step. And it again calls on the public to participate, because we're not sneaking anything here. This is not a, simple majority is going to get this done, and then we're going to move ahead and we're going to railroad anybody. This is a real important.
I'll play the devil's advocate,
Yep.
because this board right now could vote. We could vote on whatever project we want, and we could put the warrant article out, and it wouldn't pass, and we'd be waiting another year.
Right.
So what I'm thinking you're saying is that we're going to continue working as a facilities committee. You will continue to meet, thank you so much, and discuss the different options. You're not picking one right now. You're saying, I'd like to take this money and put it in the bank. And so that when the facilities committee meets, the school board meets, and then we meet with the community, we can say which options is the best one. And you can say to Ingrid, now go design this.
Close.
Okay.
Close. So this is not picking a project.
Right.
This is just appropriating design fees to get to, once we've decided, after a public input process, the project that we're going to move forward, whether that's, an ad reno, and this is for the whole.
You're going to have to spend this money in this way, no matter what we do.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so it's in part, it's a timing issue, and it's in part it's in part a one of prudence. You don't want to lose that time it's only going to get more expensive. But the key is, and we talked about this in the Facilities Committee, Russ brought up the notion, and I thought it was a good one, is that we may want to put something in the language of the warrant article itself to the extent that, I'm not going to say it, it'll be in different words, but the notion is that, the school board will have the oversight over this, but will not move forward with an actual design, with Banwell, with this money, until we've had, our public input sessions, which we're going to have, once things get, we do some due diligence here, so we can get it in a proper form, so we have actually something to talk about with the public. So this isn't a complete leap of faith,
Right.
where, the school board alone decides what to do. Look, we've been through this for 10 years.
20.
Right? We've got a balanced board, 20 years. We've got a balanced board. We've got a balanced facilities committee. We're not going to go charging down a crazy path or something that's not going to pass. Neither are we going to sell ourselves short. And I think I'm sensing a little confidence from the public that that's, they know that that's where we're headed. That doesn't mean everybody might agree at the end of the day. That never happens. But we're not going to go forward with this project or this process or the design fees without robust opportunity for public input. And that's key. And maybe, and first of all, Nate, thank you for drafting this. This is it's one thing to talk about things, but to have it on paper and we got something we can start to mold is really
Yeah.
great. So this is good. And
And this stuff, for the public, this is all boilerplate stuff. This is statutory language, it's
Yeah.
all very simple, so, but you got to see it to start thinking it.
Right, you do, and Ingrid forwarded some numbers, which I'll share, and,
Yep.
with everybody, and we can work, we can come to an agreement, but I'm hopeful, and I think Ingrid understands in concept that this can be a win-win. She can, her firm can do good work and get a design fee, but on a project that's gonna pass public scrutiny. Not a fanciful project, but a project that meets our needs, our long-term needs.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's,
So it was the meeting we had a while ago where we said, if you don't know what's going on, watch the meetings.
Yep.
If you have questions, send them in. Facilities is answering questions. There's always public comment here. Bring them. Don't talk amongst yourself. If you have a question, come to us. Call us, and we will do our best to answer it.
yeah.
I just, if we could keep the momentum going, it's a long process, Mike. You are going over every inch of every little thing. But I think it was started with Randy, and we have an idea of where we want to go, but you're just going over more information.
Yeah, and, the public input won't be simply having 3 minutes up here at the beginning of one of our meetings. No, there will be dedicated public sessions where the architect will be there, and the public will have the floor. And the public will have information that we've gathered already, to work with, so that they're not, they don't have to come with ideas, anew. They'll have materials to work with. So so there'll be sessions like that. There'll also be, at any time, as you say, Elizabeth, the public is certainly free to come here or to reach out to any one of us or come to any of the facilities committee meetings. They're not super formal. If somebody comes and they really have something they want to share, we'll make time for it. At every one of our meetings, which in all of them are on Channel 13 again for people to watch, and there's a lot of materials online. But I think this is the way to go. We just, as a board, need to figure out what the price, the proper amount is, and the wording.
So the challenge for us is that we want to try to do this in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Right, so on the 17th, so facilities is meeting probably again between now and the 17th?
Yeah, we're going to meet on the 16th.
Okay.
Yep, and it's I can get to that later.
Yeah, later, but that's fine. So, again, I go to the 17th. We can try to pull another session together if need be, but I know that it's important that any money articles like this get every opportunity for Dave Foltz and his crew at the Budget Committee to contemplate it, ask more questions, throw it back, because this would require a separate bond hearing. We could do it the same night as the public hearing, but we have to hear this and have another public conversation about it, which is great. But all of that has to happen in January in anticipation of the deliberative session and the vote thereafter. I wanted to say, yeah, no, it's fine.
I could just
That's
make a
it.
comment.
Go
I
ahead.
think two things, three things. I think this is the right process. That's how we do it as developers. We don't put out a budget without having the study done first. Number two, I think where we've missed the boat in the past is we brought to the residents a plan that we think is the right one for the community. And I think that was a mistake. I think we need to bring to the community alternatives and plans and use them to help steer this process forward. I've always felt in the past like, take it or leave it. This is what we need. This is what, that's what I don't, I know what I'm talking about. Just, find a way to, and I don't mean to be too blunt, but on the other hand, that's how I felt as a citizen. And number three, what we heard from folks is please don't just do the junior, senior high school. Because we don't want you coming back 2 years from now and say, okay, now here's our plan for the elementary school. This includes everything. Right down to everything. This is our, as we were talking earlier, this is our forecast for the next 5 or 10 years about
Like I
what
said
we
about
need.
the CIP, other than a roof that might not need replacement now, it
Right.
might be 10 years off, we're going to try to address the rest.
Right.
Anything that's a real need today that can be identified needs to be considered, and when we're doing that.
And I hope citizens, when those alternatives are brought forward and I hope we have a bunch of meetings,
Yep.
will say the reason I don't want to spend this much for that option is the following. And that's good. That's good input. I mean, it's
Yeah.
their buildings, not ours.
And it's not, I don't view it as a necessary part of the process. I view it as I do view it as necessary. I view it as an opportunity. We heard again and again from every architect we interviewed and visited. And remember, we visited about 10 schools. And we heard from people on facilities committees and administrators. They learned valuable things through the whole process that they hadn't even thought of before, or different ways to look at things. Again, the concept that there's a lot of valuable thoughts out there and there's no monopoly. Certainly, none of us would pretend to have a monopoly on anything, and I see it. I look forward to that because I'm sure that there are things that are coming that are really going to help us along that we haven't even thought of. So.
But part of what the board came to that night, a month ago or whenever it was, in the last time when we had some real serious conversation that night was, this process is playing out and playing out well. But it's going to come to a reasonable conclusion with all of that public input. And that might be in March or April. Just too late to have missed this process. We don't expect it's going to take us until September to do this.
Right.
And that's why we think this is important, because it creates the next step so that we can keep moving forward as we come to whenever that resolution or conclusion is. Okay. Good.
And then also, one more thing.
Yep.
Ann Ellis said last night, now we have these designs, we own them. So even if it doesn't go through 2017, we listen to the community, what did we miss? We have those designs, we own them, and we just do it again. We don't go through, we're done. We're done with the pretty pictures, we're done talking about different things. We now have a way to go. We have an idea of what the community wants, and we'll just keep moving forward.
Okay. On the warrant, Article 2, I need you to flip the page because I got them out of order. Article 2 would be the budget, which is right now on our document, it's Article 3. Okay? That's statutorily prescribed language. It's the same every year. And it would have, like you see here, whatever the budget committee's proposed budget is for operating, and then the default number. Okay? Go back to Article 2 on this would probably be Article 3, which would be a warrant article to approve the collective bargaining agreement with our Teachers Association. I will tell you that we were here from 1:30 until just before this meeting tonight in negotiations, Elizabeth and I, with the Teachers Association reps. And we are very, very close, and we expect that we'll be with you on the 17th in a non-public session, first describing the terms that we've agreed to and seeking the board's approval, and then we'll come into public session, come back to public session and finish discussing and vote. And then we can, as soon as both parties have had a chance to ratify, then we can talk publicly about the agreement we've reached. But we're on target for that. We think we'll be back on the 17th with an agreement. Article 4 is a little bit sensitive because the timing of it is tough, but we continue to have a potential property alternative opportunity. We have a potential opportunity to acquire a small piece of property, and so we'll talk non-public about that tonight briefly, but that might actually have to be up front. We got to talk about where that lands on the ballot, but it might be number 2 right behind the other. We have to talk about the dollar amount and whether it's a bonded amount or not. And then, just for giggles, I don't mean giggles, but just for discussion purposes, this language in Article 5 is the language that we use for our expendable trust funds. We're talking about CIP. In the conversation we had last time with Jason Carey, our IT director, we talked about the technology needs moving forward. That was one element of, for instance, CIP, where we might want to start budgeting for a dollar amount to put into that trust fund each year so that we could essentially save for bigger purchases that he would make on his tech cycle. There are other trust funds and other articles we might, but given what was already looking like it was going to be on the ballot, I wasn't sure how many of those raise and appropriate from the fund balance to this trust fund or that trust fund. I don't know how many we'd want, but we need to talk a little bit about that before the 17th or on the 17th, if not tonight. And then I wanted to mention one more thing. We just got done talking about the CIP and security and cameras. So compelling presentation made to the CIP back a month ago by the elementary principal. The junior senior high principal was with us last time, and it sounds like the administration has agreed that security measures or security upgrades are really important. It sounds like what's most important is upgrading our kind of Pelco system, our closed caption TV, so we can, not closed caption, our closed circuit television, so we can monitor our grounds and to some extent our facilities internally. And that looks different at the elementary than it does at the junior senior high because of the age, the population. One of the questions that I think we need to talk about right now is, do we want to contemplate a warrant article that seeks to address that? Or do we want to anticipate using maybe some surplus dollars in June and tackling that project this summer based upon whatever's left in our budget, which has been a healthy amount the last couple of cycles? Or do we want to contemplate trust funds or other alternatives? I think it's important because of what the administration has brought forward to us and because of the nature of the request that we at least have some game plan before we wrap on this ballot, this warrant.
I would think that given the fact that that was listed as urgent, and I believe that it is, that we need to do the most expeditious process to solve it. Whether that's and you guys will help me understand what that is, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I agree.
So
This is the 40,000? Yeah.
But there's another 40 at the other school, so it's going to be closer to 75 or 80 to do what both schools think that they need. And I think this is an investment, I want to say this out loud. I expect from everything that I've heard, this is not an investment that is wasted if we start to renovate in either building.
Right.
These are resources, these are tools, devices that can be pulled down, repurposed, relocated, rewired, and, you keep them. And a big chunk of what the two buildings are talking about doing is not just cameras and wiring, it's the back-end digital system for archiving of all of this and manipulating these images when it's time to go back and look at something. So I'm inclined that rather than putting it on a ballot, where no means no, and if the ballot article fails, you can't do it, you can't raise or can't use other money, I think we should find it in our budget moving forward to do that. And again, it's really tough because I don't want to create a conversation with the public that we have so much largesse or excess in our budgets that that we can afford to not plan. We were planning much better moving forward, but the last couple of cycles, even as we started to condense, we're finding savings in our hiring, so there's salary savings that have been there, and I'm hopeful that we
We
can
have the
do
bus
that.
contract that we just negotiated, and we have the fuel contract, which.
Between bus and fuel, I'm hoping that we can tackle this.
One of these days, I'll start to remember all these trust funds.
Well, we've only got,
I know, but is that a possibility?
You
or-
can, we could
we
use
could
the
definitely
repair and
talk about
maintenance.
using.
Yeah. And
Now,
how much is
are-
in that trust fund?
Are we agents to expend, or does that
You
take a
are.
ballot vote?
Yep.
Okay.
And how much is in the
200.
repairs and
The repair and maintenance one, right now, we have, I was just in there.
2.5, 200.
Oh, I thought it was like 7. No.
No, you're thinking the dual purpose,
Oh, okay.
5-year. Give me a second. We have 284,000.
Okay. I have 2 comments. One is the town presented this year a security proposal that was turned down by the CIP committee. And I don't know why they voted the way they did. But there are certain things I think we're responsible for doing. And this is clearly one. The only caveat I would have is I would like somebody that knows security to say what we need.
Right.
I don't want us assuming that what we need is cameras. I think, I'd like to hear from Chief Sear. We have a public safety committee. I don't know if that's within their,
Yep.
The Joint Loss Committee is the safety committee, which we've already discussed as, that was one of the issues that we'd like to bring forward to the board, so, and we met yesterday.
yeah, I mean,
So
it'd be
they're aware
nice
of
to
it.
have somebody like, the presentation we had on facilities the other day by Dr.
Joyce?
Joyce.
Yep.
It'd be
Joyce.
nice to have a security person come in, maybe even in closed session, because of,
Yeah.
You know, we were on, keep going back to these tours again, they were very valuable. I mean, Nate, you know this, but there are security consultants, not necessarily police officers, or maybe ex-police officers who come in and do a review. And, you know, I'm thinking not only for our immediate needs, but I was, you know, also thinking, you know, once we, you know, sort of narrow down designs with a Banwell firm, it'll be helpful for, have somebody come in and, you know, talk to us about security needs and whatever project we're gonna do, and what we might look at, because that's gonna be part of the cost as well, and there are choices to be made. But, you know, rather than having somebody just do this, look right now at what we got, but you sort of think of long-term as well.
So one of the things that I've had experience with in other districts is, we all know, for instance, with things like the American Disabilities Act, if I start to take this, if we start to take this apart in this school over here, in this room, or if in this hallway we do this, here are some of the rules about the things that we have to do while we're at it. One of the things that I think is helpful to do with security is to have considered and done enough analysis to be able to say, we don't need necessarily to go out and spend all of this money all at once and do all of these things. But every time a classroom door reaches a point of disrepair where it's going to be replaced, here are the standards, not ADA standards, but our local security standards by which that door should be replaced, which means the hardware should be at least at this level and it should work this way. The door should be this kind of hardness, not the old kind. The glass maybe should be tempered, it should be this, you know what I mean? Whatever those things are, because not everything that we might want to do can be done all at once. It doesn't necessarily need to be done all at once, but it's great not only for the purposes of a project where it might be more wholesale, but my biggest one is like the hardware on the doorknobs. We replace doorknobs in schools because they wear out, they get old. Well, there's a difference in the technology that you might choose to have today. And so every time you get ready to replace one, contemplate replacing the door that goes into the next door classroom, do them at the same time, and use this tool as opposed to the old one. That lock set is more expensive than the one we might have replaced it with, but it really helps so that we're not dealing with this key or that. You can also do those projects all at once, but if you have identified what the standard is, then you can measure, can we afford to do all of these at once? Can we just do one hallway at a time, or can we just take them door at a time? And that same thing applies to replacing the glass in the window we're replacing, you know, I mean, there are things like that. And I think if we were able to get some of that feedback, then we could, again, go back to our CA, we could start planning how we want to tackle those things.
I would too, except I would add there are some obvious things that need to be taken care of.
Right away.
Now.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a byproduct of that effort, is what I'm thinking. You're right.
4 weeks ago, Mike and the two principals and I did a tour of the heating facilities. And the one in the junior high school, the one in the elementary school, the chimney was full of soot, to the point soot was pouring out of the bottom of the chimney. Those kinds of things we have to stop, and it's the same thing on security issues. The studies are great, but I would, and I don't know if Chief Sears is the right guy or not, but I'd take a walk through with Chief Sears and say, I don't know if he's even the right guy, but get on it. Get somebody that says, do the smart things right now, and, you know, save the planning and so forth for the longer term issues.
Absolutely.
So what are the next steps for the immediate stuff, do we think? For the immediate needs?
And that is the 75 to 80,000 approximately?
Well, I mean, that's what they have estimated for cameras. I mean,
They've split it into two parts, the video, the camera work, and saving the structural work for the project that you're suggesting. I would hope that any cameras that we bought could be relocated if you changed halls. The source would be there. The elementary school is without cameras, and he would like to see some entrance locks and that sort of thing. But we're not talking about that. We're talking mainly about the cameras, and I would hope we design it so that it is usable regardless of what happens going forward down the road. But the cameras are a game changer. It's really been surprising to me how important they are in the process. I mean, it just changes the conversation.
Parking the police car in front of the high
Yeah.
school, to me, is a game changer.
Absolutely.
You know, we've got I don't want to get into security stuff, but,
Yeah.
you know, we have something on wheels that we could put down there.
right. Three things, I think, right away, right? Monitoring, which is our cameras. Primary access, which is the front entrances, which I think we're talking about doing as a part of the bigger project, because it's real renovation and larger dollars than you might want to do piecemeal. But the third piece is alternative access or comprehensive access, which is card systems, looking at keying, because beyond those things, part of what I think you're going to find is important can be, to some extent, procedural, which is, given our existing structures or existing facilities, what can we do or improve procedurally? And that might be more about staffing. It's more about, where's the police car, where's the SRO? It's more, you know, those are things that I think we can act on more quickly, that don't necessarily take big dollars, but they take some attention. And so
Yep.
I would, why don't I suggest this? Maybe we could establish yet one more committee that would, no,
Can we
to work with you.
administratively, can we come back with something
I
in 2
would
weeks?
love that.
Thank
Why don't we
you.
talk
That would
about,
be
why don't we
great.
talk about?
Administratively, we'll come back with.
When?
Next meeting.
And the next
Of the
meeting,
17th.
and I think we'll try to come back, I think, I'm thinking about the roof consultant. We kind of hit a positive note when we had the guy come in, and I think that's what I heard Al say, except we're talking about security. And we're gonna leave the building stuff to the architect, but we're gonna try to do some of the surveillance stuff and try to get somebody
Just
to.
get some.
But I guess we're looking for somebody other than the commissioned salesman.
Yes,
Yeah.
Great.
yes,
other than the person who gave us the estimate.
Quote,
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the same with the roof consultant. He doesn't replace roofs, he doesn't have a roofing business, but he does manage roof projects, he does spec bids. He will work with you getting bid results.
And we've got an internal code enforcement officer.
Yep.
He knows a
We have
a
resources.
lot about this kind of stuff.
Yep. He might even be good for a referral to.
The individual that's up at the high school now, the police officer.
Yes, he's
probably-
very good.
He probably knows.
He's done some work,
All
I think
this
Chris
stuff.
mentioned.
Well, I know that the principals have all walked with Chief Sear through the building, and I think they have come here and talked to us about it, but maybe we could do that again, but I say, let's try that first before we do another committee.
Julia's going to head up that committee.
I think we should hire her.
She's resting right now.
Anything else about the warrant? Any other thoughts about that? Great. Moving on then, let's talk about the superintendent search, if there's anything left. I mean,
Really isn't. We've got some really good potential candidates. I guess that's all I can say. Every part of this engine is well-oiled, and I mentioned earlier about the screening committee. I was a little doubtful about that, how that would work, because most of the people had never hired anybody before, so it was a new experience for them. But it worked great. The subcommittee that handed over the resumes to the search committee validated that the quality of the candidates were there. They were super helpful. So I think we're in a good spot.
so let me restate the expectation, because I know that a lot of people are asking or concerned or wondering. The board expects that by the 1st of next week, Monday or Tuesday, we'll be able to, just, I'm off the top, so make sure that this makes sense. We'll be able to provide to the community some target dates that we can start to plan on for when they'll hear about finalists, when we'll have an opportunity for, school visitations and public interaction with candidates, finalists. We'll be able to send that out early next week.
Yeah,
And then,
and it's the only reason we're not talking about dates is we just had our meeting Monday night.
we're trying to operationalize
We're trying
some
to
of
get
this.
the candidates
Yep.
to come in, but, we've got, we hope to have this thing, we hope to have the school board trained, the candidates interviewed, and the finalists selected before Christmas.
And so here's right now, the target, the 1st of next week, we'll try to talk about some additional dates. By the meeting of the 17th, we expect to have completed enough of a process to announce the finalists to the community. And hopefully next week, we'll be able to predict, we're trying to coordinate as well with the schools, the principals, the staff, because when we know the finalists, we'll very quickly be trying to get them in here so we can talk to them and meet with them, because we'd like to be able to pursue our final candidate by Christmas.
If everything works out,
Yep,
and it has so far, on the 21st or 22nd,
thank you.
we should be bringing the 2 finalists forward to the community, to parents, to teachers, to staff.
So part of what we have to do with that is we're trying to consider everything else that's happening in town, but we're trying to look at the 21st or 22nd as one or both of those days when we would engage with the staff and the public. And that would be during the day, it might be at night as well,
And we would announce the 2 prior to that.
before that. So
Yeah.
not later than the meeting of the 17th, we hope to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the work being done. I know the whole board does, and the community will as well, especially after we have a chance to tell them about the process you've been through. Go back to facilities then, Mike, and tell us maybe more about how you guys made out and have made out recently.
Yeah, last night we had another meeting. It was just the facilities committee without the Banwell firm. And we talked about, we had Jim Gove from Gove Engineering in Exeter come in. He did that voluntarily, and just want to thank him again. Very much appreciate him taking his time with us. And the topic was the issue of wetlands on the Carpenter property. And Jim took us through wetlands from A to Z. So we have a better understanding of what wetlands means and what the process entails in turn if you intend to build upon any wetlands. And the short of it is that there are wetlands, substantial wetlands on the Carpenter property, and They're depicted on a drawing done in 2012 by the Doucette firm here in town. I actually, on my own, on Sunday, and with one of the facilities committee members, went out and walked the property just to check it out. You can see some of the flagging that's still out there, some of the wetlands flagging on the trees. If you're facing the Carpenter property from 152 off to your left, in that corner of the property is so-called higher value wetlands that we probably wouldn't want to touch. We don't know the exact acreage over there, but they're high value wetlands, and it would be quite expensive to try to utilize them. Over to the right, there's a lesser area. It's still a substantial area of wetlands that you could potentially use in a building project, whether it be for a parking lot, a building, or an athletic field, or whatever it is. Whatever you do in encroaching on wetlands, it's not just buildings, it's whatever you do. You have to go through a process with DES. You can encroach upon or use wetlands without having to pay or compensate the state up to about 1/4 of an acre. Beyond that, there is and I can't rattle them all off right now, but there are essentially four methods under the wetlands laws. And the concept is that under the Clean Water Act, which sort of governs this, and is overseen by the Army Corps of Engineers, the EPA, and the State Department of Environmental Services, is that there'll be no net loss in wetlands. So if you use an acre, you have to provide an acre or the reasonable value of it plus. And so, again, without getting into every little detail, essentially what Jim Gove told us in his experience is that the area of wetlands over to the right, again on the Carpenter property, beyond using 10,000 feet of it, we'd probably be looking at paying in to the state ARM fund about $175,000 per acre to use that. That's just sort of his estimate from being in the industry. So this is all good to know, and to move the process along, Skip Manso, who's on the facilities committee, is going to go back to Bill Doucette, who did the survey, and we're going to get a better idea of what acreage there is involved in those wetlands that are depicted on the drawing. So, we know exactly what we have for buildable acreage, how much wetlands are there over to the right that, if you did infringe upon or you did use, what you might be looking at. Because we need to know that. Whether that land is ultimately used or not, we need to know this stuff as part of a due diligence because it's part of the cost. It's also part of the process, and I don't know if that was really, I don't recall it being addressed last time around during the last vote. I don't recall any discussions about it. Clearly, the wetlands were marked before then. So we'll, have a survey which shows us that it's already done. He just needs to pop it up on his computer and figure out what the acreage is. And that's something that the Banwell firm will really need. Because it may be that a use of that property, a conceptual use at this stage, doesn't involve the wetlands. So we don't even invoke this issue at all. But maybe it does, who knows. But we need to have that information just so we know what the real costs are. I would, again, I'd just like to thank Jim for coming in and giving us that explanation. He spent about an hour with us going through that. You can find out all you need to know about wetlands by watching that. It's on
YouTube soon.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, he explained it in lay terms, and so everybody can sort of understand it without getting into the weeds, if you will. So there was that aspect of the meeting. We did talk the idea of the warrant article. I've already given the highlights there. So, making it clear that there's just advisory or just suggestion that you're making it clear that, that it's up to a certain amount. It's not, here's your fee, go with it. But it's also that it's contingent upon, before moving ahead with a design, a particular design, that the public has had ample input, and that also that the school board, and this is kind of goes without saying, but we oversee it, that we're the stewards of this. It's not the architect going off on their own. So we talked about that, and finally we talked about some scheduling in terms of wrapping up sort of a first draft of ed specs, which ultimately the school board is going to have to be comfortable with in going over. And if it pleases the board, I think what we would do is, Sean and Chris are working on final drafts of that. They're working on different versions. One of a 7th through 12th, and one of a 6th through 12th, as we currently have it. And obviously, we're not committing to either one, but again, it's in making we're not restructuring grades, but there are conceptual designs that may have us go either way, depending. But again, it's a board decision. But I think we ought to have that information. The more information options that we can look at, it's valuable. And we have to remember through all of this process, we may sort of have it in our minds where we think this is going to go, or some of us may have it in our minds. But you got to be able to answer the question of why you didn't go the other way. Mm-hmm. If we decide to do an ad reno at both schools, we need to be able to persuasively explain why you didn't do new, because our history is such that we had a split vote last time, right? And there was strong support, for that project, even though it's it may have some criticisms in hindsight, but that's the reality. So whatever it is, you got to be able to explain the other. It sounds like common sense, but I have to keep coming back to that, because we need, as a facilities committee, we need to remind ourselves of that, where we're going down in exploring certain things like these wetlands. Who knows what we're going to do, if anything, in the Carpenter property? Who knows? I mean, we may decide as a school board that stays as a field for now, and maybe that's something to be developed down the road into fields or nothing or whatever. Who knows? But we need to know. We need to know all the factors. We need to know how much it's going to cost if we were to use it. So that's really what's going on. But so that's getting back to the ed specs. That it's in that nature. It's not making any decisions. It's just saying, look, this may be a couple of different ways you could go within reason. Not fanciful, not crazy, not off the reservation ways you could go. So they're gonna do that, and then on did I say the 16th? I'm losing dates here with so many meetings, but on the 16th, the facilities committee would endeavor to go through those. I mean, we've already discussed the Joyce report and the Joyce demographic study back in 2010. But here's the thing: at the end of the day, the school board, we need to check off on that. Might not be a bad idea if we came to that. I know we're meeting out at this time, and it's a busy time of year. We don't have to. We can do another session with that. But I'm just thinking, steps down the road. There's a little sense of relief that we're not needing to fit things in for a March vote on a whole project, but we want to.
Well, let's not slow down too much.
We don't want to slow down, Nate. We want to keep it going. I don't want to kill people. And this is in terms of meetings, but this is stuff. This is stuff that, boy, you need a good night's sleep and a big cup of coffee to go through to really understand it. You wouldn't want to be, doing it after three days of meetings, and so it may be something we devote maybe another meeting, because this is the foundation. We've already been impressed with Dr. Joyce's study, but the ed specs are sort of what the needs and wants according to the administration and staff. We need to be comfortable with that, because that, again, it's going to be, remember last time around there was discussion, do we really need that? Is that too much space? we need to be on all fours. We ought to be. I mean, just out of frugality and out of, necessity. We don't have unlimited resources. And all
We
this.
can answer the questions and have the proof to answer them.
Right, and everything I'm saying kind of is self-evident. It's obvious, but we need to be conversant in that and be real comfortable that this is what we need. We're comfortable with this, and then it's not for Banwell to do this. It's our job to be comfortable with it, and then give it to Banwell to say, okay, what can you do with these parameters?
What time is that meeting?
It's funny you should bring that up, because I was watching the meeting, and I don't know whether it's last week's or the one before, but the subject came up about should I don't know what it was, 6th grade be with the 7th, or whatever the heck that was. And I kind of paused a minute, and I says, boy, this is odd for the facilities committee to be talking about that. What made me okay about it was Sean and Chris answered the question. It wasn't Russ Simon's opinion of whether, and I think when you go at a galloping speed, you have to make sure you got the right people on the team. And I enjoyed Chris's answer to that question, because I never thought about how a 6 and a 7 versus 7 and 8 classroom would work. It was really.
I thought it was a good explanation, and they both been very helpful in that. But here's the context of it. It's a mixed question. It's a mixed question of what's right scholastically or academically is foremost. But really, why it gets raised in addition to that is that there may be advantages. There may be economic advantages, or facilities cost-saving advantages to having. There may not be, but again, I'm going back to this theme that you need to be able to show that you looked at it. And it is something that I think within the circle of things that we would need to look at. Because the questions will be asked, and whether you go a certain way, the school board decides to go one way or the other, we just need to sort of be able to explain why we didn't go that way. And you can't look. You can't go over every possible scenario you might come to imagine. You have to sort of use your judgment in what might be a reasonable scenario, and certainly this may be one. Maybe there's a advantage to doing it this way. One of the advantages that was discussed in terms of, say, bringing a 6th grade class down was academically. I mean, that's a lot of people believe that's where they belong. I mean, not that I'm the perfect example of results, but that's what I did. So in a lot of schools are structured that way. But it also mean you would free up space at the high school, which you wouldn't need to add on to. I mean, you take some away there, you have to put some down here, but but look, we're not at the point, I don't think, of deciding which of those scenarios makes sense. I mean, but I think we need to.
And I think it's a great conversation. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we did take a swing at was academically, the principals may communicate, and I think that was great, because I've heard some of that, what came out of that conversation as well. But for instance, moving the 6th grade to the elementary is more than how many classrooms do we need. And I know that part of your conversation will consider, it also weighs into the size of the kitchen and the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
And the gym.
And the gymnasium. But beyond that programmatic change has an impact on the staffing for phys ed and art and music and the like. The developmental expectations programmatically for computer technology may be different for 6th grade in our curriculum as it stands than it has been for 5th grade. And so we may not have the staffing or the tools or the environment at the elementary as it stands. By the same token, on the special ed side, the occupational therapy, the physical therapy, the tools that we use right now for a given number of students, the resources that we have for a given number of students at K-5 might not be sufficient for those that we have at K-6. And I know that the gut check or the quick response can be, well, if you've got the resources over at the junior, senior high, you just have them walk over. But you can't necessarily satisfy all your needs by simply saying, you're going to spend an hour of your day down at the elementary school from now on. So there's staffing patterns that get played into that as well. I don't think for a minute that we should let a pure dollar analysis dictate, because if there's developmentally and academically great gains in making changes, then we should pursue that with all effort to try to consider. But I don't want a facilities committee to miss the possibility that, or to miss the need, maybe more than opportunity, for those principals and their support cast members to come back and be with the board to say, it's really sounding like from a facilities perspective, it may be possible to do this. Now let's talk about the cost ramifications, the curriculum impacts, so that we can be having that conversation as quickly as possible, so that we can be ready to say, hey, facilities really thinks that K-6 is going to look good.
Right.
We think so too, and we think that this is what the budgetary impact over the next 10 years might look like, and that's solvable, dealable, maybe it's beneficial. Maybe the staffing pattern would be better than the alternative that we have, or the current model. So I don't want to miss that opportunity, and I know those guys are working right now to take the Joyce report, the school administrators, and have its impact on their ed spec.
Yeah.
You know, it's not necessarily Appendix 1, it's, their enrollment figures, their space, the program space needs, all that's being incorporated. Let me go back and ask this then about making this all happen. You guys are contemplating looking at least one version of the ed spec on the 16th. Multiple or just one, do you think, from what the guys have said?
They
I think they
said
can
they
get
could
both?
us both. And I was careful with that. Then I cautioned them. I said, look, take the time you need. This is a busy time of year. I don't want to jam you.
And-
So take the time you need. They said that, so we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, but, yeah.
So it's, if there's a deliverable to facilities on the 16th, I would encourage us to accept that deliverable here at the board on the 17th. Is it okay if that then is something that we bring up maybe in a work session that precedes the board meeting on January 7? Or is that already slowing you down?
No, I mean, we've got plenty of work to do, and so doesn't Banwell. I mean, they've got sort of one more iteration of conceptual drawings. And just, while you're on that, Nate, I'll just say that, I think we need time to do this warrant article.
Yeah.
All of our other business. So I plan to meet, the facilities committee on the 16th to address ed specs and to just, in some respects, the supply train has to catch up with the Army. I mean, we've been moving so fast here. We're running out of bread and gas. We need to make sure that we take stock and, know all the stuff that we've accomplished here, and digest it in addition to discussing the ed specs. But, so I think we'll do that then. I just didn't, and it doesn't have to be done this way. The board can do it themselves. But I was thinking that, because we'll have the principals there, and they're my reality check. I mean, I don't live that life. I don't speak that language. All these things that you said just now, Nate, are excellent points. But I'm not going to see that. It's going to be the principals. So if we're, if we've got those types of considerations, like if it's gonna be like a non-starter because of operational inefficiencies, or then they'll need to sort of explain that. We can ferret all that out. But that I thought would be a good session for the facilities committee to look through this stuff, to sort of give it an overview. If the school board wants to be there as well, that's great. I don't know if it's feasible or desirable, given all our meetings, whatever. But we can maybe have another session, if that makes sense. Like maybe I don't know, all the days are kind of getting filled up here. We don't need to rush it. We need to move it forward, because Banwell was going to really need this to, and we're going to need to put some meat on the bones and narrow things down to. This goes back to what we were talking about, the warrant article, to make that real. Right. So we could have those public input sessions and we could talk about something real.
I have a suggestion, and that is, I think Sean and Chris have a special role on the facilities committee that the rest of the committee doesn't hold. And that is the whole ed specs, where the various classes belong. I'd like to kind of drop that in their laps and say, as you're having those discussions, at some point you ought to come to the board and talk to the board about it. What is the probability or possibility of moving a class? I think the theme is to try to get everybody more involved and push some of the responsibility down further. I have yet to see a lot of them.
Well, and when it was time to talk about kindergarten, there was a district committee that sat, talked about full-day kindergarten, involved the kindergarten teachers, got some parents involved. I'm imagining a conversation with educators at the 5th grade, educators at the 6th grade, with the principals, having had a chance to do their own preliminary conversations, so the principals aren't being contradicted by staff and vice versa on camera, right? I want to give them a chance so there's no gotchas and no surprises with the senior leadership to help work with them. And maybe they want to bring in some parents and have some greater conversation. But then, come back to the board so that we can hear all of this. And I'm just thinking, that's only one conversation. That's not the ed spec. That is which ed spec, maybe. And so rather than the board jumping into a conversation about should we approve the ed spec or not, if that's really a big conversation piece that's now come around from the facilities dialogue, maybe charge those guys and their teams to start working on that so that as soon as possible, whether it's in the next couple of weeks or next month, they can be bringing a conversation to us that we can, is that?
Yeah, I would hope that they would be thinking that when you talk about this grade change thing, which is it's odd because I just happened to see it, I'd like to see their eyes light up and say, let me get some input as to what staffing would look like if we did that, because we don't want to pursue relocating staff from one building to the other if it's not a possibility. I just love to push that responsibility down, let them worry about it, think about it.
Can I just interject, and maybe I've already said this, but this isn't a proposal. It's looking at potential options. I want to be clear about that. Nobody's at the point where they're saying that we ought to do this, that we should do this. I think we're at the point we're saying it's plausible. Does it make sense in academically and from a facilities point of view? I mean, that's where we're at. It's just another aspect of our due diligence. And yeah, I think they, I think they'll give some of this thought as they're going through their ed specs. And if this was totally a non-starter, I think they would have raised their hand and said,
I hope so.
Well, because program-wise too, they're the only ones who can tell us how this would affect them inside that building and program-wise.
Right, but I mean, it's critical. I mean, we're not, and this is, again, I mean, this is, who knows how it'll pan out after we go through everything here, but it's another thing where public input's important. It may be less important where you're moving a grade down. It's a major factor if you were to say, you wanted to move a grade up to the high school.
Well, because of the developmental question.
Right.
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 Okay. All right, that's good. We'll take it as it comes. I was just looking at agenda setting and trying to make sure I'm contemplating the next 2 or 3 meetings, what we're going to tackle. Okay.
And that's facilities.
Any other questions of Mike right now? Then I already talked about negotiations. We're hoping to have that for you next time. You want to talk about? Yeah.
Tonight's handout, we have the official numbers on the tax rate. I want to point out to you that the rate is down, I believe, about 56 cents.
74. 79.
No, but that includes the town.
Oh, you're talking about our rate is
Our rate.
56.
Yep, the school district rate is 56, and that would be columns 2, 3, and 4. The locals tax, the state tax, just 2 and 3. We went from $16 under the local tax to $15.41. And under the state tax,
Thank you.
$2.43 up to $2.46. And I have one other quick item.
So let's go back to that tax. I want to make sure, we just got done building a budget with the support of the staff, right? The staff, or the administration brought us a budget, and we just approved it.
Yes, sir.
it's hard because these two things are not directly related. This tax bill that's being, that's getting ready to go out, right around December 1, we put out a new tax bill in town. That's based upon the budget we're currently in, the 15-16, that was voted last March of 15, and the surplus or fund balance that we generated at the end of last fiscal year that just ended June 30th. So it's hard because I don't want people to say 56 cents, wow, that's what we just did. We just voted it last night or yesterday. This is the last public vote that you did on the ballot in March and last fiscal year that ended in June for us. So the things we're now contemplating putting a ballot together for will be of impact to us when we get a tax bill next Christmas, next December of 16. So.
You might want to note that the last year, the town valuation went down from 2013 to 2014. And I believe in 13 it was 731 million, and it went to 711, and we came back up to 722, 476. So as the valuation moves up, the tax rate goes down, and as the valuation goes down, the tax rate goes up. It's just how the math works. So that's good news as well.
All right, thank you. We don't have anything else on the personnel that we're aware of?
I just have one quick item.
Yep.
2 months ago, I worked with Al Zink on facility boilers, and we have just an update. We will have one more meeting on December 15th, and you can look for something in the packet on the 17th. It's not going to be major or anything, but it's about preventative maintenance and repair to the boilers, and I think the goal was to what can we do to help ourselves prevent any boiler from failing in next winter, and how can we do a better job to keep those running. And so we'll be talking about that next board meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
We have nothing else on the personnel.
In the minutes, in the board packet, there were minutes from November 19th. Seek a motion to approve those.
Second.
Anybody see anything in those minutes that need to be amended or addressed? Hearing none, I have a motion from Ms. McKinney, a second from Mr. Kennison. All those in favor of the November 19th, 2015 minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain, I wasn't present.
Motion is 4 ayes with 1 abstention.
I was here in heart.
You were. We talked about you all night long. Also in the packet tonight, minutes from our very brief public and non-public meeting of Tuesday night, December 1st. I seek a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion about those? Those were pretty quick. I gave the notes to Penny, and she helped me pull that together. Thank you, Penny. Hearing none, I have a motion from Mr. Kennison, a second from Ms. Shelton. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Then we're unanimous. There was a manifest on the table tonight. I look for a motion to approve the manifest.
Sit tight.
No problem.
The payroll register, was anything else on the,
Oh, we didn't have a summary page.
we didn't have a summary, all I've got is payroll.
So there is no manifest.
We signed a different one the other night.
Yeah, you signed one on Tuesday?
December
That
1st.
must have been AP.
We'll defer
So
this.
then That, I have to see it, because I have to see what's in it.
We'll defer this to next time, and the next time the number will look even larger than it should, because it will be a catch-all for.
It's not going to hold
Can't
anything
be
up.
larger, we don't have that much money.
We don't have that much money. So having said that,
Yeah, I mean, you can approve this one, this is just payroll, but yeah.
Well, why don't we pick it up on the,
You want to just pick it up, that's fine.
we've signed them, so you can give that to Annette, and we can go
And
ahead.
then you also have other forms in there individually that you have to receive.
Yeah, tonight, we passed out individual documents. You already got yours, I handed it out.
Right, you just put it on top of the.
Complete that stuff as you would like, and we'll return that stuff to Teresa. We do want to talk very briefly in non-public tonight, but this was hoping to be a short meeting, so I'm looking for a motion to go into non-public under, hold on, RSA 91A3, Roman numeral 2, Section D, to consider the potential acquisition of real estate.
More signatures?
So moved.
He has the other ones.
You have to sign one of those.
On I need a roll call.
Okay.
Good night. Thank you. On a roll call vote, Mr. Zink,
Aye.
Ms. Shelton,
Aye.
Mr. Kennison,
Aye.
Ms. McKinney,
Aye.
Mr. Lunny is an aye. Unanimous 5-0. We're into non-public at 8:58. Good night, folks. Thank you very much.